It was just another quiet night in my two-floor house. I lived in a converted duplex, meaning there were two separate living spaces inside, each with its own kitchen and entrance. My younger brother, Elliot, took the downstairs unit, while I occupied the upstairs. Most of the time, Elliot stayed over at his girlfriend's place a few towns away, so I was often alone in the house. I wasn't the type to be scared easily. I was already in my early 30s, but sometimes, when the house settled in just the right way or the wind made the old pipes creak, I get that uneasy feeling. That night, I was sprawled on the couch in the open-concept living room, watching an old horror movie. My apartment had an open layout, meaning my back was to a large, empty space behind me, something that always made me feel exposed in the dark. As the movie played, the flickering glow from the TV barely kept the shadows at bay. Every so often, I found myself glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see something lurking in the dim corners of the room. But of course, there was nothing. After the movie ended, I went through my usual routine, brushing my teeth, turning off the lights, double-checking the locks. Then, I crawled into bed and fell asleep. Only 2 hours later, I woke up abruptly, my body covered in a light sheen of sweat. At first, I wasn't sure why I had woken up. Then, through the muffled silence of the house, I heard a voice downstairs. It was Elliot's voice. It wasn't coming from outside, it was inside the house. He was calling my name. Still groggy, I sat up, my brain sluggish and disoriented. He wasn't supposed to be home, was he? Maybe his plans had changed. Maybe he'd had a fight with his girlfriend. Maybe. But why did his voice sound off? I got out of bed, rubbing my eyes, and stepped into the dark hallway. The only light came from the street lamp outside, casting faint golden beams through the window. I turned on the hall light and made my way toward the stairs. "What is it?" I called back. There was no response. Now, I was feeling more awake, more alert. The kind of alertness you feel when something isn't right. I made my way down the stairs slowly, my socked feet barely making a sound against the wooden steps. The downstairs was completely dark. Then, I heard it again. "Come down here." I froze. It was Elliot's voice. There was no mistaking it. But there was something wrong about it. It was too perfect. The way it carried through the empty apartment felt unnatural, like a recording played through hidden speakers. I fumbled for the light switch in the foyer, my fingers shaking slightly. When the overhead lights flickered on, I saw it. Nothing. The apartment was empty. No Elliot. No one. I stepped into the dim kitchen, my heart hammering in my chest. "Elliot." I called again, but my voice felt small in the silence. Then, from his bedroom, I heard something fall to the floor. I whipped around. I had just checked in there. It was empty. Forgetting all pretense of bravery, I bolted back upstairs, taking the steps 2 at a time, slamming my bedroom door shut behind me. I locked it, my breath coming fast and uneven. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and immediately dialed Elliot's number. No answer. I tried again. No answer. I sat in bed, my back pressed against the headboard, listening, straining to hear anything. But the house had gone eerily quiet, like whatever had been down there had left. Or worse, was waiting. At some point, exhaustion overtook me, and I must have drifted off into a light, uneasy sleep. I woke up the next morning to my phone vibrating against my pillow. It was a text from Elliot. "Hey, why'd you call me at 1 a.m.? Everything okay?" My stomach dropped. I immediately texted back. "Were you home last night?" The reply came almost instantly. "No, man. I stayed at Kayla's." "Why?" I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. There was no way I imagined it. I got out of bed and cautiously made my way downstairs, daylight making the shadows seem less ominous. I stepped into Elliot's room, looking for the thing I had heard fall in the dark. But the room was exactly as I had left it the night before. Nothing was on the floor. Nothing had fallen. Nothing was out of place. I should have felt relieved, but instead, a slow, crawling sense of unease settled deep in my bones. If nothing fell, if Elliot was never home, then whose voice had I heard? And more importantly, what had been waiting for me in the dark? Story 2. I was 16 when I saw him for the first time. At that age, I was old enough to stay home alone, but my mom still worried. She was an ER nurse and worked overnight shifts, which left me alone in our small house for long stretches. My dad had never been in the picture, and my older sister was away at college. That night was like many others. I had just said goodbye to Mara, a girl I had been seeing. She had come over to watch movies, but her parents were strict and wanted her home before midnight. So, just after 11:30 p.m., I walked her to the front door, kissed her goodnight, and locked the door behind her. The house felt too quiet after she left. I wasn't tired yet, so I went upstairs to my room and got into bed, scrolling through my phone while the TV played in the background. My bedroom was on the second floor, with a window that overlooked the backyard and our small wooden deck. I don't know what made me look up. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the shift in the air. But when I glanced out the window, I saw him. A man, sitting in one of the patio chairs on the deck. At first, I thought maybe Mara had come back as a joke, but the second I really looked, I knew this wasn't her. The figure was too large, a man with broad shoulders sitting eerily still in the chair, his face angled up toward my window. Even in the dark, I could see him watching me. My heart slammed against my ribs as I dropped to the floor, crawling away from the window like a scared animal. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a neighbor messing with me? Maybe I was imagining it? But when I built up the nerve to peek over the window ledge again, he was still there, still watching. I grabbed my phone with shaking fingers and texted my friend group chat. Me. Yo, is anyone messing with me right now? There's some guy in my backyard. One of my friends, Dylan, answered immediately. Dylan, dude, WTF? Call the cops. Me. What if it's one of you idiots trying to scare me? Dylan, bro, we're all at Chris's house. Call the FING cops. A cold dread settled into my stomach. It wasn't my friends, and he was still sitting there. I forced myself to stand, took a deep breath, and tried to be brave. I opened my window just a crack and called out, "Hey, what do you want?" The man didn't move, but then his shoulders started to shake. He was laughing, not loudly, just a slow, wheezing sound, like he was trying to hold it in. A sick, shivering chill crawled up my spine. I slammed the window shut and backed away. My mind raced. Do I call my mom? The police? Do I just sit here and hope he leaves? Then, the back door handle jiggled. My stomach flipped. I ran to my bedroom door and locked it, my breathing ragged. I could still hear the faint rattle of the handle downstairs, then a soft tap-tap-tap against the glass patio door. Like he was knocking. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 with trembling hands. The operator answered, and I whispered frantically into the receiver, trying not to make a sound. There's someone outside my house. He was in my backyard, and now he's trying to get in. The dispatcher kept me on the line, asking me for details, my address, my name, but I was barely paying attention, because the knocking had stopped. Silence. I strained to listen, every muscle in my body tense. Then I heard something worse. The sound of the front doorknob turning. The door was locked. I knew that, but I also knew locks weren't always enough. I heard a soft, slow scraping sound, metal against metal. A sickening realization sank in. He was picking the lock. I didn't wait. I grabbed the bat from under my bed, threw open my bedroom door, and ran down the hallway toward my mom's room, where she kept an old handgun in a locked safe. I had never used it before, but right now, I was willing to learn on the spot. Just as I reached her door, the front door creaked open. I froze. A single, agonizing footstep echoed through the darkened house. He was inside. My breath hitched. I scrambled inside my mom's room and slammed the door shut, twisting the lock. My fingers fumbled desperately with the gun safe's combination, but I was shaking so hard I couldn't get the numbers right. Then, slow footsteps on the stairs. I held my breath, pressing myself against the closet door, the phone still clutched in my hand. The dispatcher was still speaking, her voice distant and meaningless against the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps coming closer. Then silence. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, he had turned back. And then, a single knock on my mom's bedroom door. Tap, tap, tap. I stopped breathing. Then his voice. Soft, almost sing-song. "I see you." My body went cold. A sudden burst of red and blue lights flooded through the windows. Sirens. Footsteps. Heavy, running footsteps down the stairs, not mine. The sound of the front door slamming open. By the time the police got inside, he was gone. Vanished into the night. The officers searched the house, the yard, even the woods behind the property. Nothing. No sign of forced entry, no evidence left behind. But I knew. I knew what I saw. The police didn't doubt me. My panic had been too real. But with no sign of the intruder, there was little they could do besides a drive-through patrol. When my mom came home the next morning, she found me still clutching the bat, my knuckles white, my eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. She didn't ask many questions. Just held me. That was 5 years ago. I moved out shortly after, went to college, got my own apartment in the city. I've tried to forget it, tried to convince myself that it was just a random break-in attempt. But sometimes, at night, I still dream about it. The way he just sat there, watching me. The way he laughed. The way he knocked on my mom's bedroom door and whispered, "I see you." Story 3. I was 10 when it happened. It was a Friday night, and my parents had left in a rush, barely taking the time to say goodbye. They had gotten a terrifying phone call. My older brother, Caleb, had been in a car accident. The hospital said he was alive, but that was about all they could confirm. My mother had started crying instantly, and my dad had to practically drag her to the door. Before they left, my dad turned to me. "Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone. We'll be back soon." And then they were gone. I was alone in our small house, my little sister Ava already asleep in her room down the hall. At 10, I was used to being home alone. I wasn't scared of the dark, and I like to imagine I was just as strong and brave as my older brother. So, after locking the door like my dad said, I went back to my room, turned on my GameCube, and sat down on the floor to play. I got lost in my game for a while. The house was silent, but I barely noticed. I was too busy fighting monsters on the screen. But then, I heard the front door open. My fingers froze on the controller. I had locked it. The air in the house suddenly felt too heavy, pressing down on my chest like a weight. I didn't hear my parents' voices. No footsteps moving toward the stairs. No one calling my name. Just silence. I turned off the TV, my body going stiff. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe I was so wrapped up in my game that I just... Creak. The softest sound of a floorboard shifting downstairs. My breath hitched. I crawled off the bed and crept toward my bedroom door. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure whoever was down there could hear it. I peered over the staircase railing, and my stomach dropped. 3 people stood in my living room. Not my parents. Not my brother. Strangers. The closest one was a tall man in a hoodie, his hands stuffed in his pockets. Beside him, a shorter woman in baggy clothes, her back turned toward me. The third figure was mostly in the shadows, but I could tell he was staring at the stairs, staring right at me. I slammed my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. How long had they been there? I backed away slowly, my bare feet making no sound on the carpet. The moment I was inside my room, I locked the door and sprinted to Ava's room. She was still fast asleep, curled up under her blanket. I didn't wake her. Instead, I went into her closet, shoved a pile of toys aside, and crawled inside. I was shaking so hard I could barely keep myself from gasping for air. Then, I heard the first footstep on the stairs. The creaking was slow, deliberate. They weren't running. They weren't panicked. They were searching. For me, I held my breath, pressing myself deeper into the pile of stuffed animals. My hands were clammy, my body ice cold. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Someone was standing in the hallway. I could hear them breathing. I squeezed my eyes shut. Ava let out a quiet sigh in her sleep, and for a split second, I thought, if she wakes up, if she cries, they'll know we're here. I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. The breathing outside the door grew louder. Then the doorknob turned. I pressed my hand over my mouth, swallowing a sob. The door creaked open. I could feel them standing there, just beyond the closet. They didn't say anything. Then, footsteps. The door shut again. I counted the seconds, waiting. 5, 10, 20. My legs had gone numb. My eyes burned. I didn't trust the silence. Then, the front door slammed shut. I stayed hidden for hours. Maybe minutes. It felt like an eternity. Only when I heard my parents' car pull into the driveway did I finally move. I crawled out of the closet, legs trembling, and ran to the stairs. My mom barely had time to step inside before I threw myself into her arms, sobbing. At first, she thought I was just scared about my brother. But when I told her about the people in the house, my dad's face went pale. He checked the doors. The locks were still engaged. The windows were closed. There was no sign of forced entry, but I knew what I saw. And the worst part? The police never found anything. No fingerprints. No evidence. Like they had never been there. But I know the truth. They were there. And I still don't know why they left without taking anything. Or why they came in the first place.